What is going on, everybody? My name is John Solo, and sometimes I wonder how my forehead got to be so shiny. Seriously, it's like the Arkenstone gem is embedded into my forehead. Anyway, welcome to the 19th official episode of Ask Me Anything. This is, of course, the self-explanatory series where you guys ask me basically any questions that you want, although somehow they almost always end up being the same thing, and I answer the questions that I find to be the most interesting, entertaining, or sometimes downright weird. I was originally planning on doing a Messed Up Origins episode this week because I took last week off when I was traveling out of state for reasons I will get to eventually. However, as soon as I got back from my journey, life got incredibly crazy, as it almost always does when you spend any time away at all, and as I did my best to just dive back into the creative process, I realized that I just wasn't going to have enough time to make an MUO this week, or at least make one and have it be up to the same standard of quality that those episodes normally are. I promise I'll make it up to you in the coming weeks with a very highly requested episode of Fables Explained, as well as the return of Messed Up Murders. That's right, it wasn't just a one-off thing, we are actually going to turn it into a series. But in the meantime, let's answer some questions, shall we? Other than making videos, what have you been learning or doing during quarantine? Well, to be honest, quarantine didn't really change my life all that much. I spent most of the past couple of years self-isolating from the outside world. One, because I didn't have many reasons to go into the outside world as somebody who works from home and works alone from home. But I did take the opportunity to reestablish some good habits that I used to have that I kind of fell off of doing when I moved to Illinois. I started reading every morning again. I got really into yoga, which I had taken up back in January, but I got really into as soon as the gym closed because that was like the only form of exercise that I had. Lauren and I have watched more movies during these past 2 months than I think I have alone during the past 5 or so years. And also a lot of Animal Crossing. In fact, I'll go as far as to say maybe a little too much Animal Crossing. The timing of that game's release was just impeccable. The fact that it came out right when everybody got stuck inside their homes, and it's a game about moving to a deserted island and building it from the ground up. I keep almost dropping my iPad. Building it from the ground up, meeting friends, doing chores, just kind of living a regular everyday life during a time where your regular everyday life was disrupted. It makes sense that the game sold more copies in just the first month alone than all of the other ones did in each of their entire lifetimes. That's a real stat, you can look that up. Would you consider doing overviews about stories like the Iliad or Odyssey? You know, I actually get a lot of requests like this from people who want me to cover stories that are a lot longer than the ones I normally cover. I mean, there's 2 more comments right here. Would you do a Messed Up Origin for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Would you do a Messed Up Origin for classic novels such as The Wonderful Wizard of Oz? Wizard? Did I say wizard or wizard? I meant wizard, if that wasn't obvious. And to put it simply, yes, I would absolutely love to cover stories like that. However, there is a bit of a problem, and that problem is the fact that I am a one-man show, John Solo. It's in the name. I recently hired my buddy Drew to help me research for the Messed Up Murders, and I'm also looking at other researchers for the Mythology series. However, for the most part, it's all just me. And it typically takes me 6 days, sometimes 7, to make a full episode of Messed Up Origins, even if it's only 10, 12, 15 minutes long. So if you want me to cover a story that is significantly longer than those, it's gonna require a pretty insane amount of work. I'm not saying I'm not willing to do that amount of work. However, there would not be very much else going on in the channel while those videos were in production. Does that make sense? Because in order for me to do longer stories like that justice, they would have to be my sole focus during production. So until I put a team together of people who are researching and writing things for me while I'm working on big projects like that, it's just not going to be in the cards. That being said, I am working on expanding the channel in that way towards the end of this year after I get some other important life stuff out of the way first. Relationship advice. What is one thing that will almost certainly make a relationship better? This is kind of my go-to advice, not just for relationships, but just life in general. Honesty. If you are honest, I guarantee all of your relationships will improve. At least all of the ones that matter that are with quality people. I mean, some people don't like to hear the truth, but it's all about how you word it and when you say it. For example, if your boyfriend or girlfriend came up to you and said, "Hey, do I look fat in this shirt?" There are ways of phrasing things that soften the blow. So if you say, "Yeah, you actually look like a hippopotamus that escaped from the San Diego Zoo and then ran through one of those cheap t-shirt shops and made love to a mannequin and picked up its t-shirt as a souvenir," you don't want to say that. I might be the first person to have ever said that, though. You can give a compliment sandwich where you say something nice and then you offer a little bit of criticism that's constructive and then you say something nice again. Or you could just keep it simple and say, "I don't know about fat, but I've seen you look better in other things. I mean, that's just an example off the top of my head. It's not perfect, but you get what I'm trying to say, right? It's inevitable that somebody gets mad at you when you make that switch because people have very fragile egos and some don't like to hear the truth. I mean, some are so walled off, their consciousness is so walled off that the idea of the truth isn't even the same as your idea of the truth. There's also something to be said about trust. When somebody knows that you are an honest person and they come to you for advice or they ask your opinion on something, they know they're going to get the real deal. And oftentimes, at least in my experience, they don't get mad at you for telling the truth because that is what they came to you for. So yeah, in my opinion, honesty. I mean, if the universe has a plan for anybody, then you gotta be honest with the universe. Otherwise, it's not gonna reward you. If you were living in a fairy tale, do you think you would be the hero or the villain? Why? Now, I might be a little biased, but I think I'd be the hero. I mean, there's of course the chance that I would just be the random innocent bystander that watches all of the action go down, but if the choices are hero or villain, I'm gonna say hero. In part, I think it's because I just have too much empathy to be a villain. It doesn't really matter who it is. As soon as I realize that I've hurt somebody's feelings, I start to feel really, really guilty about it. I mean, in this day and age, people are way more sensitive than they used to be and way more sensitive than they need to be. I think that's an undeniable fact. So there have been a few occasions where that doesn't apply. Like, for example, I've opened a few videos in the past by saying, "What's good, fellas and females?" And I've gotten a few tweets and comments saying, "Isn't that a bit misogynistic?" And I tell those people to fuck right off. Because one, I didn't mean it in whatever ass-backwards way that you interpreted it. I said fellas and females because it alliterated and it applied to basically everyone watching the video, and that was that. And two, just like everybody else, I am a very flawed person, and there are plenty of genuine reasons not to like me. So if you come at me with some ass-backwards interpretation of what I said and try to use it as evidence that I'm a bad person, I'm gonna tell you to go tell it to the wall, because the wall certainly cares more than I do. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe I'd be a villain. Are there any murder cases messed up enough that you will not touch them? I thought long and hard about this question because my knee-jerk reaction to it was, no way, the more messed up the better. But after considering it for a little more, I realized that if there were a type of murder that I wouldn't be very comfortable talking about, it would be school shootings like Columbine. I can't exactly put my finger on why, but there's something about that I would just, at the very least, be extra cautious, because I don't want to make it sound like I'm glorifying what these people are doing. I don't want to put ideas in other people's heads. That being said, there is plenty of interesting things to talk about related to those events. And I'm not saying interesting in a positive way, I'm just saying interesting in a neutral, that's interesting way. So I'm not saying there's no way I would talk about a story like that, but I would just be extra cautious if I were, and I would wait a while. Like, I wouldn't talk about it anytime soon because I want to have more experience discussing those kinds of things to make sure I'm doing it in the most sensitive way and informative way possible. Which of the characters that you have studied do you relate to the most? There's a few potential answers for this one that are bouncing around in my head, Heracles being one of them, Pinocchio being another, but I think the one that I relate to the most would be Icarus. One reason being that, like Daedalus, my father is also a master craftsman, and every time I try to help him out, I seem to just slow him down. And two, like Icarus, I also have my own version of flying too close to the sun. As many of you know, a couple of years ago, I was squatting at the gym and decided to do 10 too many pounds for 1 too many reps, and that led to me hurting my back and changing the trajectory of my fitness level and my life forever. Since then, I've gone through physical therapy, surgery, more physical therapy, cortisone injections, and to this day, things still aren't 100%. Things have definitely improved, don't get me wrong. I even go through some days where I'm really not in that much pain at all, but the injury is still there. And now there's a more definitive limit of the things that I'm physically capable of doing. That being said, I gotta make my peace with it. I flew too close to the sun and paid the price. Is this the Krusty Krab? No, this is Patrick. Do you think you'll ever do a series about how the authors of these stories were inspired to write them? I do think eventually I'm gonna start up an author series. It might not be one that I visit every month like the majority of the Messed Up Origins series that I cover, but I would love to do some videos about the authors that we talk about the most regularly and what inspired them to get into writing and what parts of their life influenced the type of stories that they wrote. I think that'd be pretty cool. Would you cover some of Aesop's Fables and Fables Explained? I would love to learn the backstory. That's another one that's been on my to-do list for a really long time that for some reason I just haven't gotten around to. Part of the reason is I couldn't really do a Messed Up Origins on Aesop's Fables, at least the way that I normally do it, because Aesop's Fables are like the building blocks of a lot of stories that we see nowadays. I don't know if you've noticed this, but there have been quite a few fables, Princess and the Pea would be one of them, where the roots kind of stop right around ancient Greece. So me talking about the origins of Aesop's Fables would be kind of difficult because there aren't that many origins to explore. So if I were to cover Aesop's Fables, I would probably definitely do a breakdown of them as a whole. Who was Aesop? Was he a real person? If he wasn't, where did most of these stories come from? And if you guys really liked it, then I might do a mini series about Aesop's Fables and talk about some of the stories that we didn't get to in that original episode, maybe do a couple of compilations or so, and really just try to unpack their morals and connect them to stories that we know nowadays. And now for the final question. What Greek god would you hope to be born under? There's a few viable answers for this one, but if my choices are limited to the Olympians, I've got to say my pick would be Zeus. I mean, yeah, he's got a lot of kids and an entire universe to reign over, so we probably wouldn't get very much father and son time, but you can't deny that Zeus has an undeniable bias, I just said deny twice, towards his own children. Take Cupid as an example. He made Zeus chase that mortal Pootie Tang all around the world, and some of the Olympians as well, but still, Zeus couldn't stay mad at him as soon as he apologized. It didn't matter how many bastard children he spawned as a result of being shot by Cupid's arrows, or how much it pissed off Hera. As soon as that little shit apologized, Zeus gave him a little hair tousle and said, "It's all good, son." So yeah, I would pick Zeus. Not only would I get some real badass godly powers as a result, but I would know at the end of the day that the king in charge would never be mad at me, or at the very least, would always come to terms with my mistakes and forgive me if I said I was sorry. But on that note, I'm gonna bring this episode of Ask Me Anything to a close. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you to those who submitted your questions. Really appreciate it, and I love you from the bottom of my heart. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all of them, but there were over 200 submissions, and as you can see, it took me quite a while to get through just 8 or 9 of them. So that's how it had to be. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have, make sure you turn notifications on, because sometimes YouTube is a lazy little bitch and doesn't always deliver videos to your sub box. I've got links to my social medias down below. That's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, so make sure you check those out and follow me on there if you haven't already. I'll be honest with you guys, I actually hate social media and really hate that I have to plug it at the end of every one of these videos, but it is a vital part of making the channel and our community grow, so if you followed me on there, I really would appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, make sure you check in next week for a very special episode of Fables Explained, where we're going to be revisiting John Henry's story, but specifically talking about the unbelievable corruption that went into his sentencing. It's a very serious, topical, and important video that I would really appreciate you guys watching, so make sure you come check it out. All of the proceeds from that video's AdSense are going to be donated to the BLM movement, so the number of views that it gets directly impacts the amount of good that that video does. Yeah. Thank you all again for watching. I'll be seeing you very soon. Until that day comes, my name is John Solo, and remember, John shot first.